naming Diyos. Maraming salamat po sa buhay at lakas na aming taglay, sa liwanag ng kaisipan at sa pagkakataong maipagpatuloy ang pag-aaral ng mga kabataan. Gabayan mo po ang bawat isa sa amin. Anuman ang bahagi na aming gagampanan, naway maging maayos at matagumpay ang pagtuturo at pag-aaral na aming gagawin sa araw na ito. Patawarin mo po kami sa aming mga pagkukulang at pagkakasala. At sa aming paggawa, ikaw po ang aming makasama. Amen.
Good morning, grade 7 students. So for today's most essential learning competency, you need to describe the different levels of biological organization from cell to biosphere. And here are the list of the biological levels. We have the cell, the tissue, the organ system, organism, population, community, ecosystem, biosphere. Starting with cell, can you identify at least one type of cell that can be found in the human body? Type your answers on the comment box below. Okay, so we have here the white blood cells, correct? We also have here red blood cells. We have the skin cells, correct? Egg cell and the sperm cell, correct? So those examples are correct. We have the somatic cells or the body cells. And also we have the sex cells or the gametes. So what do you think is the difference between these two? For somatic cells, we have the red blood cells. We have the white blood cells. Even the skin cells. How about there are two kinds of cell, the plant cell and the animal cell. If the cells work together and perform specific functions, it is now called as the tissue, correct? So, we have 4 types of tissues in our body. So, what are those? We have the epithelial tissue, the connective tissue, the cardiac tissue, and the nervous tissues. What are the differences between these tissues? For the epithelial tissues, this is responsible for the protection of our body, such as the skin, and can also be found in the linings of our internal organs, such as the stomach and the bladder. How about the connective tissue? When we say connective tissue, it is used for structural support like the blood and the bones. And for the cardiac tissue, it is a specialized tissue that makes up our heart for pumping blood. How about the nervous tissue? The main component of our brain that controls our body. Again, the 4 types of tissues in our body, we have the epithelial tissue, the connective tissue, the cardiac tissue, and the nervous tissue. If these tissues were grouped and work together that also perform specific function, that is what we call the organ. The examples of organs are the heart, the kidney, the brain, the lungs, liver, intestine, bladder, and stomach. Those are just few examples of organs. Now, what is the function of the heart? It pumps the blood, correct? How about the kidney? What is the function of the kidney? It removes waste and extra fluid from your body. And our brain, how about the brain? It is the control center of the nervous system. How about the lungs? Lungs is where the respiration takes place. And the liver? It regulates most chemical levels in the blood and excretes a product called bile. Intestine, we have the small and large intestine. For the small intestine, the function of this is absorption of nutrients from the food into your bloodstream, and the large intestine, it absorbs the water and the excretion of solid waste material. How about our bladder? The bladder is the temporary storage of urine. How about our stomach? What is the function of our stomach? Your stomach. What is the function of your stomach? It is, the function of that is for digestion of food. If we have the organs, of course, we also have the organ system. Now, what is the function or the purpose of this organ system? So, for organ system, if these organs work in unison and perform a specific function, it is now called as organ system. So, what are the examples of organ system? We have the circulatory system. We also have the respiratory system, digestive system, nervous system, and also we have the reproductive system. Those are just the few examples of the organ systems inside our body. Now, let's identify the differences between these organ systems. So, let's start with the circulatory system. What is the function of the circulatory system? It permits blood to circulate and transport nutrients, oxygen, and remove waste products like carbon dioxide. How about the respiratory system? The respiratory system is responsible for taking in oxygen and expelling carbon dioxide. So we inhale the oxygen and we exhale the carbon dioxide. How about the digestive system? Digestive system is where digestion happens, that involves the breakdown of food into smaller and smaller components until they can be absorbed and assimilated into the body. Next is the nervous system. It is a complex collection of nerves and specialized cells known as neurons that transmit signals between different parts of the body. How about the reproductive system? It is an organ system by which humans reproduce and bear live offspring. Let's have some recap about the previous biological levels that we have tackled. What do you call the basic unit of life? Correct. It is the cell. What will happen if we grouped these cells? It will now form a tissue. Correct. If these tissues were grouped together and they performed a specific function, it is now called as organs. If these organs were grouped together and also perform a specific function, it is now called as organ system. Now, what do you think will happen if these organ systems are being grouped together? So, that is what we call the organism. Again, organism is a group of organ system and an individual living thing. So for the examples of these organisms are not only human beings, but also animals, plants. So as you can see here, the dog is an example of organism. How about this one? The giraffe. Correct. It is also an example of organism. How about this cute little cat? That is also an example of an organism. How about the plants? These plants. It is also an example of organism. Now, what do you call the group of organisms of the same species living in the same place and time? That is what we call the population. So, the group of giraffes can be called as the herd of giraffes. And in your city, you are also part of the population. We also have the group of elephants, also known as the herd or parade of elephants. Now, if these elephants is in the same place as the giraffe, the zebra, the antelope, it is now called as a community. Because community is a group of different living things in a certain place at the same time. Another example of community. All organisms found in the pond, like frog, like the tadpoles, the fishes, dragonflies, and even the turtles. Now, when do we call a biological level as an ecosystem? Or, what do you mean by ecosystem? What is this ecosystem? So ecosystem, when living things interact together with the non-living within a defined area. Meaning the living things a while ago that we have mentioned, when there is an interaction with those living things with non-living things in a specific or defined area, that is now called as ecosystem. The examples of ecosystem, the population of giraffe, zebra, elephants, and horses interact with non-living things such as the soil, the air, the water, and etc. That shows an ecosystem. Again, in an ecosystem, we have the interaction between living things or biotic factors and non-living thing or the abiotic factors in a defined area. Lastly, we have the biosphere. Biosphere is part of the earth inhabited by living organisms, including their non-living environment. Let's identify the different levels or these different biological levels. Let's start with the cell. Next, we have the tissue. Then it followed by the organ and then the organ system. Right after that, we have the organism, the population, the community, the ecosystem, and the biosphere. For the question and answer part, let's choose at least 3 questions from you. So let's have from Dalandana National High School. Ma'am, can you please reiterate the biological levels? So for the biological levels, we have the cell, the tissue, the organ system, the organism, the population, the community, the ecosystem, and the biosphere. Next, we have from Begnay National High School. Please differentiate population, community, and ecosystem. So let's differentiate these 3. When we say population, it is a group of living organisms with the same species in a defined area. While when we say community, it is also a group of organisms but has different species in a defined area. And lastly, we have the ecosystem. For the ecosystem, it is the interaction of living thing and non-living thing in a defined area. Next, let's have from Malinta National High School. Ma'am, what are the 4 types of tissues? So, the 4 types of tissues, we have the epithelial tissue, the connective tissue, the cardiac tissue, and the nervous tissue. Before we end, be reminded that even though you are still a student, always take good care of yourself, your surroundings, and the environment on your own little ways, because those little things will make a big difference to the biological levels.